Welcome to the Cookbook, where we invite guests on to share the ingredients of what has helped make them the successes that they are. All of it, the good, the not so good. You're not going to find anything half-baked here. And our kitchen gets messy sometimes. That's when the fun starts. So come on and join us. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cookbook. I'm your host, Iris Goldfeder, and I'm super excited about my guest today. She's such a deep, soulful person, and I'm going to read her bio and bring her on. She's pretty amazing. Christine Laria is a guide for leaders, a coach for coaches, and a healer for healers, assisting them in their full embodiment of presence and love. Through intuitive guidance, heart-centered energy transmissions, and sound healing, she guides way-showers, thought leaders, and brave souls on the leading edge of consciousness to become masters of the enlightened heart and mind. And I have been in one of her sessions, and it was amazing, and it truly was transcending. Christine brings a wealth of experience of 30 years in both energy medicine and classical music. She has an amazing voice, including many healing modalities, as well as credits at Carnegie Hall, CBS, and the Hallmark Channel. And I'm going to be a geek and just ask you about the Hallmark Channel because I have to. She's the pioneer of 3 modalities for energy healing: the heart field transmission, creation codes transmission, and unity field transmission. Christine's life mission is in service and devotion to the full awakened embodiment of humanity in freedom, joy, love, and peace. So without further ado, let's meet Christine. So hey. Carnegie Hall, CBS, and Hallmark. Okay, that's like a holy okay. So we have to talk about that. But hello and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today and for working through those technical difficulties. I mean, we figured it out, so.
Yeah, thanks, Iris. It's so fun to be with you and your beautiful audience today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I have to ask, okay, CBS, Carnegie Hall, and the Hallmark Channel. Let's hit on that like right away.
Yeah, you bet. So in my work as a classical musician, I was a soprano and also a conductor. And so I was part of something one year that was a group of professional singers that they brought together to do a performance in Carnegie Hall. And then those of us there had the opportunity to audition for solos that were within that larger work. And that's something I got to do. So that was just such a fun, pinnacle, and exhilarating experience to be on that classic, iconic stage. And it was in the St. John Passion. So yeah, it was just awesome. It was great. And interestingly, it was a very small solo, but hey, it was that one. And it was Pilot's wife. And Pilot's wife historically is a seer. She's the one who had the vision of things. And so in a dream. And I loved that this little bit that I got to sing in Carnegie Hall was actually about seeing clearly and knowing things. So that was fun. CBS, see, it's fun, interesting. Probably like you and maybe others, I've had many lifetimes in one. So one of my lifetimes prior to this one was as a church musician in the conducting aspect. So I had choirs of all ages. And our church was chosen, we auditioned to provide a Christmas special. So we were broadcast nationally on Christmas Eve on CBS, viewed by, I don't know, however many millions of people. And I was the one who put together the entire musical production for that. I conducted the orchestra. I wrote pieces for it. I brought all the choirs together. I was also teaching at a university at the time and brought in all the choirs from that and just basically directed that whole musical portion, which it was primarily music because it was Christmas Eve. So super fun. The Hallmark thing is not as interesting as it sounds because they picked up that particular program and then they made it part of their broadcast lineup another year on Christmas. So that's how it ended for them. Yeah, it wasn't actually a sappy romance or anything.
I thought maybe you were singing in the back at somebody's, wedding, or I almost said funeral, somebody's wedding, or, something. Because we get so sucked into those. It's so funny.
Oh, it's great.
I think the first one I saw was like, I don't know, a really long time ago. And now it's like tradition. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like I am not your typical Hallmark viewer, but I get so sucked into them because you know the whole formula. You know, it's going to be guy meet girl or girl meet girl now, which is why they created a whole separate channel, but that's a whole nother story. But, you know, so you have person meet person, person fall in love with person, drama happens. So then they break up before they get together, and then they get together, and then there's a kiss and they're happy and, you know, happily ever after. And honestly, in today's day and age, it's so refreshing because all the other shit is about, you know, people getting killed on, you know, whatever, you know, like FBI and all these other things. And it's just refreshing to kind of watch that. And then, of course, I'm a Star Wars freak. So there's that, because there's not always happy endings there. So I have to get my happy ending outside of life, because I'm living my happy ending, I believe. So
yeah, and I love what you're pointing at, which is that in those Hallmark series, there aren't actually people doing shitty things to each other. They're not hurting one another intentionally. There's drama that happens, but they're not going around just being jerks. There's
right.
kind of,
well, there are some. I mean, there are a couple of, you know, I think the older ones, because I think the newer ones don't have that as much. But the older ones used to have the one jerk who was trying to get in and get in the middle of everything, right? And now it's like, but yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's. I think the world needs, and we've discussed this, we need a lot more kindness, right? In this world, which is why we have people like you.
You know, I was just this morning, I was thinking, how can I just love on the world more? How can I love on myself and the world more? What does that look like? And it actually framed itself as kindness. How much more kind can I be moment by moment to myself and the world? And I mean, it's like an ongoing invitation for everybody, because there's a lot of influences in other directions. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because people who used to know me and who know me now see a different person, because I wasn't mean. I was angry. I was a very angry person for a very long time, and very negative. And I didn't realize it until I realized it. And, you know, when I look at myself now and I look at myself then, it was like, how could I have been like that and been okay? Because I really wasn't okay. I was really angry at the world. I was very frustrated at a lot of stuff that was happening. I couldn't control what was happening. And now I realize it's not my place to. It's my place to control, you know, what I can control, and the things I can't.
Yeah. You know, and even what you're saying, like, how could I have been that? How was it like that? And how is that okay? I think that's so important to look at, because everybody's doing the best they can. It may not look like it to us, but I don't know a person who ever has said, you know, I could be like this. I could choose this way, and I could behave this way and make these choices, and that would probably feel way much better, and everybody around me would be happy, and so would I. But, you know, I don't think I'll do that. I think I'll go over here and be angry. Nobody says that, you know? It's like nobody's doing that. We cut ourselves a break, you know? We're where we are when we are until we're somewhere different.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is perfect. And it really takes inner work. It really takes looking inside. And I did a lot of that, like with my spirituality. We've spoken about that. The spiritual journey that I'm on, you know, I've embraced the woo. I love the woo. Because what's funny is, you know, I was raised Jewish, and then I just stopped believing in religion. Not necessarily God, although Jen Urezio may have like a different spin on that, but because I believe there's something greater out there. And to me, it's the universe. And, you know, God, to me, when I look in the Old Testament, was this narcissistic, mean, take your kid up to the top of the mountain and almost kill him. Oh, wait, just kidding. Who does that?
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not okay with that. And then, you know, there's the New Testament, and there's Jesus, and Jesus is this kind, loving, amazing, you know, man. And then the people that claim to follow him are hateful. So it's like, what? So not everybody. I don't want to put everybody in a bucket, because I know a lot of people that walk the walk as well as talk the talk.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is that there's a common, I don't know if we would call it brokenness or just struggling of humanity. And it doesn't really matter what people believe. They're still human.
Right.
So when you have humans, you have all the stuff, and it does get frustrating if somebody says, "Well, my belief system makes me a superior human
Right.
in some way," and maybe they don't even mean superior; they just mean right. Well, that's always kind of a load to bear as well. So, what if it's really about we're all being human, and in that it doesn't matter what we believe; we're essentially equal. There's no hierarchy here,
Right.
and religious people are not better humans.
No.
They're actually just not. I mean, it's a funny little myth, but they're just different. They believe something different, but it has nothing to do with how good or kind or compassionate. It can go along, but it's not a given. That's a different thing. That isn't actually about a religious belief system. That's about what we choose moment by moment, and that's individual.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And that's why, like, when I, like, my friends laugh when I'm like, I've embraced the woo. It's because I was looking so long for something to truly believe in and feel like in a, I don't want to say visceral, but just on this, like, this, I guess, spiritual level. I don't know. And I found it.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it through spirit, through, all of the different things.
And what does that look like in your experience that you found? That just is super curious and beautiful to me. Yeah.
In my experience, it was, this is hard because it's to articulate something that I feel so deeply. There is no judgment.
Mm-hmm.
There is just love for everyone, everything. It doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, Martian. I don't give a crap. My love for nature and animals is, I think, a big catalyst for it. My dogs are my kids. I protect them. I mean, we just spent stupid money on. So last year we spent stupid money on stones because Skylar was eating mulch. Well, this year, Piper threw up a rock. So we had to go out and buy like cobblestone. So instead of like having small stone, we had to have, big rocks, like seriously like this, that she can't eat. And to me, it was like a no-brainer. And I had somebody go, just get a different dog. And I said, go get a different kid. Go get a different kid. I love all things that are living. And to me, that's what spoke to me. And that's why this spoke to me. Because it's all about love and connectedness and this awakening that's happening.
Yeah. No, I get you. I totally get it. It's so foundational what you're talking about. And it's something that it's for most of us. I mean, you're smart, your people are smart. It's like, we get it. Oh yeah. Let's not be judgmental of other people or ourselves, but to actually live that state, because it feels completely different when you live inside your head with no judgment. When you look around at people around you actually with no judgment. And to me, I would take that all the way to not even an opinion. I don't have an opinion. I may make a choice. I'll always be in free choice and empowered choice, but I don't have an opinion about better, worse, or right or wrong about other people or myself. And so to live in a state of no judgment is really free. It's so free. And it's also very connected. And I think that's what I hear you talking about, that your awareness of when you say embrace all things woo and of spirituality is that it's a connected state with you and the world around you and within yourself, with something, that greater thing that you were talking about, like that thing that's bigger and beyond.
It's deep, right? It's like this deep.
Yeah.
It's like when we saw Avatar for the first time, and they had, I don't know, have you seen it? So the tree and how the tree connects everything. I think it was so funny because, and that was like years before I realized what the connection was. But when they destroyed the tree that everybody was connected to, like I felt that on a, like this deep, it like physically hurt me. I was like, oh my God, like, why would somebody do that? And then as I grew and I sit outside on my lawn and I put my hands and my feet on my lawn, on the grass. It's not my lawn, on the grass, right?
Mm.
I feel this connection, and it's like everything is connected. I have the woods back here, and they're not my woods, but when I'm grounded, I feel it. Like I feel it all. And that, I think, is what spoke to me and what made me realize I found what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And it was literally on my lawn all along, right? Just like sitting out there and feeling that connection. And then everybody that I've met in the past 4 years has been on the same journey. I haven't met one person, not one person who is on this same journey in one way or another. And it just blows my mind. It's like I'll meet somebody and we start talking and we're like, of course, you know.
Yeah.
And it's cool.
It's profound, isn't it? You know, I was in this one of the groups that I work with, and we were connecting all of ourselves, exactly what you're talking about, very intentionally through what my visual for it was, this web of light. So it's like this awareness that you have, we're connected, and that is like so deeply nourishing. Can also be a little bit of a mind bender when you're like, wait a minute, I'm connected to that too. And you're like, yep, you know, it's like all of it. And yet there, of course, we were in this space of unconditional love and presence, and we're connected in this web of light. And it was just so incredibly beautiful. And so then now we're coming out of that meditation aspect, that energy activation, and different group members are sharing their experience. And I'm telling you, this was so profound because I'm with you on everything you're saying. And then I got to have my next level of experience of that, which was every time somebody would speak, it was like the universe is speaking through you. And then the next person would speak and it would be, and here's the universe again talking through you. It was visceral. It was experiential. That
experiential is, yes.
That was the word that I was hearing when you were talking.
Yeah.
And we need that. We don't need only ideas. You know, ideas are great and I love the mind. And we actually need experience of what we are in addition to just a cognitive knowing of what we are. It's not enough, you know? So I feel like that's what you're talking about. That's what people are having, waking up to, experiencing, joining with others in, is the actual experience of what we are. And I'm telling you, what we really are feels really, really good.
Oh,
and if you're feeling 100%. Something other than that, it's probably far off center of what you really are, because what you are feels really, really good. Yeah.
Right. When you can connect with that. When we were in Hawaii, I don't know if I told you, this was like so funny. We were driving to Diamond Head. And I'm in a rented car and we're driving down whatever that main road is. And I look and there's a lizard on the hood of the car. And I'm like, oh my God, we have to. And I'm like speeding now through town because I don't know if this lizard is going to burn on the hood of the car. And I'm like, oh my God. So I named him Louie because why not? So I'm like, Louie, hang on. We're going to get there and I'm going to get you off this thing and you're going to be okay. And Heather's like, only we would have a lizard on the car. I'm like, I know, but what if his feet are burning? You know, it's metal. It's you know, hot. So we get to Diamond Head, and I'm trying to shoo Louie off the car, and so I shoo him, and he jumps into the grass, and I kneel down, and I'm like, "Go be free, Louie!" Right? And Louie turns around and jumps on my arm, and I'm like, "Okay, this is cute." you can't come with me. And I'm like petting him. And I said, and the car wasn't hot. That part of the car was not hot. Like I touched it and I was like, oh, he was okay.
Wow.
So he's like, stays on my arm. And Heather's like, what is happening? I'm like, well, apparently we're connecting. So I'm going to let this happen for another couple of seconds. But I'm like, Louie, we have to go climb Diamond Head. So I put my arm down and he jumped off. And I said, go be free. And he jumped back on my arm. And I said, Louie, dude, you can't come. And he started like crawling up my arm a little bit. And I was like, okay, so what are we doing here? And he just like kind of, you know, sat there. And I'm like, Diamond Head is going to close at 5. You know, it's like 3:30. We have an hour and a half to climb up and down. are we going to be able to do this? And I went, okay. So I held my hand out and he climbed on my hand and then he walked on the grass and I was like, are you going to go now? And he like turned around and looked at me and he went. And we were like, okay, Louis free. And I said to and Heather's just looking at me like, and I'm like, I'm not even surprised that like at all, because Hawaii to me was one of the most reverent experiences I've ever had.
Yeah.
Like being on her land, being in her presence. It was just like, it felt like the most revered thing I've ever done and experienced. And so, you know, walking on Diamond Head, it was like, I didn't want to touch anything that, you know, I had to like touch the crater to be able to get up if there wasn't like a railing. But even then I was like, I'm sorry, you know, I just kind of have to hold on to, you know, to get to the top. I felt like the entire trip was this incredible religious experience. And the way that I connected with her, and I didn't know if you and I, you know, spoke about this, but it just felt, talk about being connected.
Yeah.
It was the most amazing thing.
Yeah. And you just illustrate it. It's like you just painting this whole movie for everybody listening. It's with people, but it's with creatures and it's with land and it's with so many things. And what I've found here in the Hawaiian Islands, and I've talked with, local people about this very directly, is that we ask permission, especially with this sacred land. And I remember once I was down in Waipio Valley, which is the Valley of the Kings here on the Big Island. It's a very sacred valley, really powerful, so much mana, and it will call me. And I would only go, now we have a different set of regulations, so it's not as open access, which is fine. But when it would call, I would go, and I wouldn't go unless I was called. And I remember one time walking down and I was down in the valley and there was this really awesome rock. And it looked like a great place to sit. And it was kind of back in these trees and it was flat. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go get on that rock and I'm going to sit and, commune. But as I got closer, I noticed that there were offerings on this rock. There were leis and there was some fruit, and it was clearly a sacred rock. And it had called me because it was sacred. And I knew enough, like from what you've just described in your relationship with the land, I asked permission. Oh yeah, there you go. And I asked permission, like, is this okay for me to sit here? And I tell you what, it was like, no, actually, you're welcome to be here, but this is not a place for you to sit. And I was like, I got it, like fully received. And on the other side of that was Hawaii as the island calling me so unequivocally to live here. And she's like, this is what you're doing and I'm going to help you with it. And here's the plan. And I had to get on board with the plan because I wasn't planning to come here, but she was like, yeah, you're coming here. So yeah. So that deep listening through that connection.
Yeah.
Reverence for all of life. I love your story about Louis. It's just so perfect. Yeah. And we do the same. Like, honestly, my partner takes it just to an extreme. He takes cockroaches outside. He takes centipedes outside. He doesn't kill anything. It's a reverence for life. And I'm like, really? It's like a cockroach. And he's like, well, let's just let it have its life somewhere else. And I'm like, don't you think it's coming back in here? So we have this.
He's a better man than I, because I do draw the line at cockroaches. I mean, I'm sorry.
Anyway.
But it's funny because there are. Now in Hawaii, I don't know if I would have felt the same. I might have been like, oh my God, it's a Hawaiian cockroach. Fine, we have to save it. But here, no. I grew up in New York City in Queens, and we lived on the basement floor in an apartment, and we would turn on the light going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and these things would like scatter. And my biggest freaking nightmare is like, if there's a cockroach in the house, you just own my house because I'm moving. Because once you see one, there's going to be like a bunch more. So, but we just went on a whole different tangent. So I'm glad that he can move cockroaches. I cannot. If I see one, it goes.
There's always more. Once we start getting really good, we're going to go farther and farther and farther. I'm just saying.
There's layers, right? It's like, yes, there are exceptions. Spiders, I'm willing to let live. She's like, they must die. And I will let them out for the most part, unless she's like really freaking out. And then I'm like, okay, I'm really sorry. And then I feel bad about that. But a cockroach, I feel no remorse for. But anyway, so you started this whole new business and everything. So what made you decide to become an entrepreneur? Was it Hawaii calling you and that's what made you do it? Or were you just like, I'm done with everything else?
That Hawaii came after I was already on the entrepreneur path. And what happened was it was a moment of coming to a truth about what I was really doing and what I was called to do. So in my university work, so I wasn't in corporate, I was academic, and I would teach voice lessons as part of what I did, do choirs, teach theory, all that. And my voice students would say to me, like one woman confessed, she said, well, Christine, actually the practice room next door to your office, that wall's a little thin. And sometimes I sneak in there and I listen to the lessons you're teaching. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be dropping in, but she said, it's just that you don't really teach voice lessons, you teach life lessons. And I gain so much from the things that you're saying. Wow. And then other people would say that to me. And I was like, that's true. Because what I noticed was I could teach technique. I was good at it. I could really tell you how to sing. I could work with you. But whatever your self-concept was, whatever your ideas, your inner critic, your am I good enough? Is it worthy to be heard? All this stuff. It didn't matter how much technique I taught you. That was going to determine what kind of singer you were. And that was fascinating to me. So I was always bringing that into my work, which was guiding people beyond their limitations, beyond their hooks, beyond their beliefs, conditioning, programming, all the stuff. Bless you. And so then the other thing I was doing was I was constantly interested, spending all of my free time and all of my money on exploration of consciousness and healing modalities and teachers who were spiritual teachers. And I'd go to the conferences and I'd learn this and I would do that. And I was like, wow, that's really what I'm passionate about. Now, that wasn't always the case. I had really been passionate about music. Like so bad. It was all in, it was my whole life. And then this other thing became more interesting to me and music dovetailed for me. It was like the way with that teaching that it led me into being a guide for people. And then all that other stuff I was doing helped me develop my intuitive skills and my ability to read energy and to work with energy and all the other things. And so it became this natural evolution. And then a person I had been studying with offered a consciousness life coaching certification program. I knew that if I did that, that would be the way I went. And I said, I'm going to do that. And I kid you not, the next day in the mail, because I'd been a full-time adjunct professor, which didn't exist. And they even had it in the university. You can't do full-time adjunct. That's not allowed. But that's what I was doing because that's how it was working out. And I'd been like full with benefits, the whole thing, but I just had this designation that didn't exist.
Wow.
Well, the very next day when I decided I'm going to go this way, I'm not going to be a professor anymore, I got a letter from the dean saying, we are so pleased to offer you a permanent appointment, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh my God, talk about the universe texting or, testing you. It's like,
yeah,
you're going that way? Really? And I was like, yeah. So that became my, my transition into the entrepreneurial part. That came out of me just aligning with what my life's calling was. That came first. What came first was, here's what you're really doing. And what came next was, now you really got to figure out how to do that. Yeah. Make that work. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's just so, and so many of us don't listen to that calling. Like, because we're on this path, that is, either you're a professor or you're in corporate or you're, wherever, and that's your path and that's where you're going to work and you're going to retire and blah, 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 blah. And that's going to be it. Even though in the back of our minds, we may have this little niggling that's saying, do this. And you're like, no, that's, do this. It's like, no. And people don't do it. And I think there's something about having that entrepreneurial spirit where we hear the voice and we're like, okay. I mean, for me, it was that of necessity. It wasn't like I heard something and, it was like I was going to do it. For me, it was, I lost my job and it was, do I collect unemployment or do I do something? It's like, okay, let's start a business. 10 years later, it's a very successful business. I've learned so much about business and about myself. And there's a saying, I always say it, if you ever want to really know yourself, become an entrepreneur, because you will really, really learn what you're made of.
Yeah.
Because there are those months that, it's like, oh, why am I doing this? Not as
Oh
much.
yeah, that's going to happen.
Right? You're like, should I go get a job? But you got to, you got to go through it to get through it. And, but I just think it's so interesting that you had this calling. But I think that you were always, just knowing you the way that I do and seeing, getting to experience you do what you do, you were meant for this.
Thank you.
Oh,
I had my own like not pleasant way of getting there too, which was just through, like, as it happens for so many of us, you have some major life event or events that just leave you undone. And in searching for your way through, you discover things you didn't know before. And strengths also, for me, it was really a path of physical healing as well. And everything that, traditional practice said was, I'll just have this autoimmune disease for the rest of my life and my symptoms will get worse and they'll try to manage them. And I just went, not for me. And so that led me to really search in earnest for other ways, which then also dovetailed into this calling, which was, okay, if that happened for me, there are probably other people who that might be, they'd like another option. They'd like a different path. Right. And it really taught me about just how whole we are. It's everything that goes in there. It's all the pieces. And I just was like resisting half my life. And it turns out that hurts. There's a good reason I was resisting half my life. It had been really, really painful. And I just didn't want any of that to happen again, So, but gosh, yeah, what an incredible way to, it's how I work. I find the path. Nobody teaches it to me, really. This is how it's been. It was like as a singer, I didn't really have anybody teach me technique, but I got really good at it and really good at teaching others because I wanted to find a way. Right. So that's what's happened with the work that I do. And even largely with how I've done my business is I was like, well, this is what I want to do. And I don't even really know, but let me just watch. What are other people doing? What's another option? How do we do that? Oh, there's how we do that. So there was a lot of self-directed discovery, and it's great. Like, what an empowering path. I'm really grateful. Yeah,
you're on a hell of a path. And I love the music piece and that we share that. I mean, I never took lessons. I just, my mother was a singer. She wasn't a professional singer, but she sang. The first movie I ever went to was The Sound of Music because, I'm old. And as soon as we got home, we started harmonizing with do, a deer, a female, and we started doing that whole thing. That was it. I was hooked. And then as I, grew up, music just became, because I had a really hard upbringing, right? Music became my outlet, my guitar, my, writing, all of it. And I've been singing professionally for, 30, 40 years, never had any formal training, never, I think I had like one breathing lesson. I love it. And I was in like somebody's studio when I was 25 years old. We were all high as kites. And she's like, yeah, this is how you breathe. And I'm like, okay, like I'm going to remember this. And I actually did remember it. I mean, I took the book at home and I was like, oh, I kind of remember this. And so I would practice that. And, but that was it.
That's awesome.
Same thing with guitar, self-taught. I never took any lessons. So I think there are just some things that, we're born with. So in your practice, because I've been to one of your sessions, which was just really the way that you combine your music and your singing with your bowls is just, it's like transcending. I do mindfulness and I am not the best meditator. I try to, sit down and make the time for it, and I don't always do it. But I remember being in your workshop, and wherever we were, you just hit that note and you sang along with it. And it was literally transcending. Like I literally was just like, it was one of the most amazing things I heard.
Thank you.
So how did you know to pair that?
That's been another part of the path that's evolved, and one of the people I studied with, she used her voice to move energy and for healing and for activation and all kinds of stuff. And this was early on. It was before I got into my formal training for this part of the work. And I was at a retreat, actually here on Big Island, interesting, years ago. And so she starts doing what some people call toning or sounding, which is using the voice in a particular way. It's not just singing. Yes, it is singing, but it's like singing with an intention to be healing or to be clearing or to be, comforting, or it could be you can use it in all kinds of ways. So she starts doing her thing. And I kid you not, I think this is really important for people to hear, because I'm going to encourage everybody to do this with whatever the thing is, which is, I remember I looked at her and I was like, I know how to do that. I don't know why I know, but I know how to do that. And I literally stood up. It was 200 people, but it was a fairly open environment. And I went over to the side of the room, and for a while I'm just watching her. And then I just started singing, duetting with her. And she, looks over and nods like, yeah, let's go, kind of thing, gracious response. And suddenly I was like, I do know how to do this. So some of you may be aware, and if you're athletes or you do a particular sport and you watch somebody who's really good at it, and this is a documented phenomenon. You go watch a pro tennis player, you go out and you have like shots you didn't know you had, and you have the best game you ever can imagine, because something in you immediately downloads that information. Yes. And it bypasses your mind. So that's what happened for me with using the voice. It was like, I bypassed my mind. I had it. And I started working with it. Then the second piece was, of course, I already know all the musical stuff. That was super helpful. The second piece was, I was on this trip, which now I lead with a colleague of mine, to see shamans and healers in Bali. And so this one shaman's looking at me and he goes, so you, through translation, you're a singer. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, and you sing every day. I was like, yeah. And he says, does that bring you so much joy? I was like, no. Because that's where my inner critic was mean. It's like the thing that we value so much. We want it to be right. And other people enjoy my singing, but I didn't enjoy my singing. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, oh. And so he starts in doing his thing. Now, granted, I've already downloaded this capacity to work that way. I know all the technique, but I've got this block, right? Which is my relationship with myself. And he just starts doing his thing, boom, boom, and he's whoosh, 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 and all the stuff. And then he looks at me and he's got this real like laughing Buddha, happy child, like intensely, energetically powerful presence. And he goes, so how's that feel? How's your heart? Was the question. I was like, wow. I said, my heart feels like singing. And he goes, so sing. And so I start, and we're in this little cement room, literally like this little thing, we're all in there and doing the thing. And I start singing, and it's just completely different, because whatever, that last piece that needed to go bink is gone. And he's watching me. And then he goes, I finish, and he goes, do it again. And so I started again, and he starts doing his shamanic work, his energy work, while I'm singing. Well, I couldn't go back in the box. Like, classical singing, as beautiful as it is, there's a preferred sound. There's a way you do it. You do it in this way. You make these sounds, not those sounds, all the stuff. I was like, I'm done. I retired. Like, that was, I think, in the spring of whatever year it was. And I had one more gig coming up in June. I was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm not doing anymore, because I don't want to be in the box. So yeah, it was just amazing. Like to download the ability and then have somebody help me refine it. I needed that support. Yeah.
That's so amazing, because for me, singing is, it's a couple of things. It's challenging depending on what I'm singing. Mm-hmm. And other times it's just like transcending. Like, there's like a song that'll speak to me, and like I'll hear it and I'll be like, okay, I have to learn that. And I learn it and I sing it. And when I sing it, I'm gone. I'm like on another plane. And it's just this very, it's a spiritual experience. It's right. It's just like this thing. And everybody has something, whether it's singing, it could be woodworking, it could be whatever it is, right? There's something that brings somebody, joy out there.
And that lines you up with something bigger than what you're like, yeah, well, you weren't like kind of wounded and you didn't have any blocks the way I did with singing. You're talking about, the flow. You're talking about dropping into the sweet spot.
Yep.
And then you're also talking, so that's a spiritual, energetic experience, but it's physiological, because you're connected, whether you quote know how to breathe or not, you are breathing and you're using your breath in a different way when you sing. And so what I'm getting from what you're saying is like you're fully tapped in the center to the life force.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And when you're in that, you just go. Yeah. It's like
when you're in that zone, you are in that zone. I had there's like Brandy Carlisle's The Story. I'm intimidated by that song. So when I sing it, it challenges me because I'm intimidated by it and I know it. But I could do Make You Feel My Love by Dylan that Adele, redid. I get lost. I just go to another whatever, whether I'm playing guitar, whether I'm playing piano, whatever I'm playing, and I sing that song, gone.
What is it that intimidates you about the other one?
Oh, it's a bitch. You have to.
Difficult, yeah.
So you go, it's like, you start on, and I don't know if it's an octave. I think maybe it is an octave, but I get through the entire song and I know I got it and I know I nailed it until that, because her version is after the solo, there's like an a cappella, you see the smile that's on my mouth, it's hiding the words that don't come out. And then it goes up to, all of my friends who think that I'm blessed. But then, the chorus part is like rasp. It's just like 100%, and when I know it's coming, it's like I have to go, okay, it's coming. And I'm like, get out of your head. And I literally have this like argument with myself right before I'm about to hit the note. And that's where the challenge is, because I'm like fighting with myself.
Yeah, arguing's not good for the flow.
No,
we should all make a bumper sticker. Arguing is not good for the flow.
It's really not. And so that's why it's challenging. And I know it's in my head. So that's like one of the things that I'm working on is nailing that and not being afraid. Like we're doing, are you going to be at Fun Friends?
I can't be there. Yeah, shoot.
Oh,
yeah, I totally would. I would give you like, well, we'll do it off this call. I can give you the probably 2, maybe 3 things that'll actually make it easier. Because you're talking a technical thing, but you're also talking about how momentum sometimes creates almost like a lot of. I'm just speaking physically here, not with all that stuff in your head. That's a different deal. But
right,
like it creates almost too much pressure from below. At the same time, you got to make an adjustment. It's a technical thing, but yeah, it's actually not that big of a fix. So yeah, we'll talk.
All right, we'll talk. So, okay. So what advice do you have for someone who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah. You gotta be like a multidimensional being, meaning you got to keep the long view all the time while you do all the short view stuff that makes you lose track of the long view. But you got to do both at the same time because it is a long view experience. It's and there will be, just like you were saying, Iris, there's going to be the times that like, why am I doing this? But if you haven't invested in your long view bank, it'll be running dry. And so you invest in that regularly. Like you literally come back to your vision of why you're doing it, what you love about it. And not only that, how you're really good at it. And so then you get to disconnect that from what the outside world tells you based on, your spreadsheet or how many clients you have or what's happening here or whatever the thing is. You actually disconnect your truth of knowing about what you're doing and why and how good you are at it. And you let that be internally known and you give it to yourself. And then you stay with the details. Yeah. The long view is so important because it needs it. Yeah.
See, and that's what I love about this podcast is everybody has all of these different answers. And I have never had anybody talk about the long view because at the end of the line, at the end of the day, at the end of the line, well, I guess the end of the line too, but at the end of the day, that is right. What it is. It is the long view because you're starting here. And now I'm sucking on something because my throat got dry. So
you're
having issues with it. But, we start here And then we look at this quarter, and then we look at the next quarter, and then we look at the next quarter. But at the end of the day, it's not about the next 3 quarters. It's about 3 years from now.
Yeah. And it's not even just about the quarter that just happened, because that's another very like not only short view, but like backward view, because we need to learn from things. But if that's defining kind of who we are as we do it, and that can be tough because it's going to go up and down. You've all heard that one and you all know it. But how do you sustain what's true for you? Yeah. And have it be more of a long view. Yeah.
And how your truths change. I find that for me, not your truths, but your views. I think that for me, when I first started, I looked at business way differently than I do now. Mm-hmm. And I'm also, I've evolved and I've grown since then. And, I'm not different. I'm the same person. I've just grown. And I hear people say, oh, I'm a whole different person than I was back then. And it's like, no, you've grown and you've evolved into, who you are now. And guess what? 2 years from now, I'm going to grow and evolve more. Mm-hmm. Next month, I'm going to grow. It's always, to me, it's always we're all works in progress and we're all growing. And I don't think there's any mistakes. They're all lessons, as long as you learn from them. I mean, hopefully you learn from them and it's a lesson.
We can make it whatever we want it to be. We can make it like a hell of Groundhog Day, or
yeah. So what? I know that we were talking about. I wanted to pull this up because I know you wanted to talk about this, and
wherever we go is perfect. Yeah,
I know, but transcending the inner critic. Let's talk about that for a minute.
It's actually related to this thing we were just talking about, the long view, because the critic gives you a short view. So it's related in that way. What I find, and this is not new probably in most people's, like, you're smart, so your mind may know this, but most people haven't mastered it yet, is that people talk to themselves inside their heads in ways that they would never allow other people to talk to them. So, and what I realized at some point, because I had a really strong inner critic, and I have none now. So I'm just going to sit here and just claim it and go, you know what? If I can do it, anybody can do it, because I had one of the worst ones around, and she was mean girl all the time. Here's the thing. The reason we do it is because we want to be better people. We want to avoid the pitfalls that caused us pain or, lack or whatever. There's good motivation for an inner critic, but here's the question. If judgment were going to work, do you think it would have worked by now? Because most people I know who do it to themselves, they're like A students. They do it all the time really well. So we know that, and yet we still tolerate it. And to me, that's just weird. Like, if I had a person in my life who spoke to me the way I used to, I'd be, you're not my friend.
Right. Like, get lost. Yes.
Yeah. I would honor myself enough to say, you can't treat me that way. And if you want to treat me that way, out you go. We need to be actually as firm with our inner voice as we do with the rest of the world.
Yep.
So here's the thing. What happens is, the problem is we're identified with that inner voice. We think it's us. We think it's our voice saying these things to us. It's never been your voice. When you were born and you came in and you were a baby and you cried because you were hungry or wet or tired, you did not think to yourself, I'm such a bad baby for crying and fussing. Right. You didn't possess a critic inside of you. You learned it. And judgment runs in this place we are, like radio signals and Wi-Fi in the air. It's everywhere. Like, so even if you're not personally generating it, you're picking up on everybody else's.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So somebody's original voice of criticism, society programming, important people in the life, whatever, it's internalized as ours. And the first step is actually realizing it's never been your voice. And if it's not yours, that means it's optional and not required.
That is awesome.
We begin disassociating. We just say, wait a minute. And when it comes in, now this is the thing, eventually it gets to be your guide. It's not like, oh God, yeah, that's right. And we're a little bit all kind of like battered people though. Like if a woman's been abused and they're like, just leave the abuser, and she can't do it because she doesn't have enough strength in her yet, until she gets some strength built up to go, walking away. So that's what we do with our inner critic, because we've been abusing ourselves inside our heads.
Yeah.
And there's a part of us that's been delivering the abuse, and part that's been receiving it.
And it's all within.
Yeah. And so we repair that relationship. And the way I did it was through mirror work, and I would show up and look in my left eye into the mirror, and I would invoke the part of me that was hearing everything I said to her. So I'd talk to her, and I'd be like, hey, how you doing today? And she'd go, why would I talk to you? You're mean. And then I say, well, I just want to listen to you. Yeah, but I try everything I could do always to be the best. And I'm always doing everything. And all you do is tell me I'm wrong. I hate you. I was like, fair enough. Okay. I mean, this is really what's living inside of us when we've been living with an abusive inner critic.
Right.
So you got to dig deep. There's work to do. Just like you said, you got to do the work. And for me, it began with repairing that relationship and giving her a safe place to say what she felt, just like we would with anybody. We listen, we feel loved, seen, heard when somebody listens to us, receives us without judgment, lets us feel how we feel. It's the same, because there's the part delivering it and there's the part receiving it. So you give all the loving attention to the part receiving it, and that begins to change the relationship. Yeah. And it can be done. And then you have to reroute it. You have to you actually have to practice it. You have to do it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And it's totally reroutable. That's the beautiful thing. You can totally reroute it. I was doing a faculty recital, and I had a memory slip, which I don't usually do. I mean, I was a pretty good memorizer, but man, it was bad and awkward. I'm just up there like going, oh God, I'm supposed to be singing right now, and I have no idea what I'm supposed to be singing. You're like the faculty example for the students, the whole thing. And I turned to my pianist. I'm thinking, she'll mouth me some words, right? Like that'll help. And she's looking at me like, why aren't you singing?
Oh my God.
So I stand, and then suddenly it comes in, and I just start singing in the middle of a sentence, super awkward. But now I'm back on track. And the first thought in my head was, you're amazing. I love you so much. And that part of me that was used to being like, really abused went, really? And the voice, it's all happening while I'm singing. And the voice goes, yeah, you're amazing. And she goes, oh, okay. And on we go, And I was like, when that happened in real time, reflexively, first thought was nothing but loving kindness. I was like, man, if I can do this, anybody can do this. Yeah.
That is so amazing. Because one of the things that I've been really cognizant about is that, I say, treat yourself like you would your best friend. Mm-hmm. Like if you screw something up, or if your best friend messed something up, you would be supportive. You would be like, hey, it's okay. It happens. Yeah. And when we mess up, we're like, oh my God, I'm so stupid. Like, how could I have done that? What a dumbass, blah, blah, blah. But we're not being kind to ourselves. So I've been on this like journey of doing that, of being that supportive friend to myself. And man, it feels really, it feels good to be able to go, yeah, okay. So, you made a mistake, but did you learn? Great. It's a lesson. Move on. Next. That's it. And I used to just now my wife beats herself silly, and I'm so working on that with her, and, she's better. Mm-hmm. She's better, but we have a long way to go, but at least she's listening, because before she would be like, oh, that's a bunch of, hoke, but she sees my woo. Mm-hmm. She's a very strong Catholic girl. She says her prayers every night. I respect her and what she believes in 100%, but she sees what this has done and how I've transformed, and I'm trying to get her to transform on be kinder to yourself. Yeah. Stop doing that. Follow my example. And hopefully it's helping. But something that you said made me laugh, because when you were like, you forgot the words. I was doing a show and I forgot the words, and it was a really loud song. So I just held the mic over here, and I was like, and like, nobody knew that I didn't know what that I forgot it, Nobody in the band knew. I mean, I knew. And then when I remembered, I, put the mic back up, and the set ended, and I was like, oh my God. And my drummer caught it. He was like, that was badass. He said, and everybody was like, what did she do? Like, what do you mean? And he was like, She had no idea what she was singing because I was like back by him. And he saw that I was going blah, blah, blah. I can't remember the words, but I'm just going to scream in the mic and look like I'm singing. And here I am. And so it was pretty funny. But I laughed at that. I was like, okay, that was a good save because everybody in the bar was drunk. Nobody knew what the hell I was singing anyway at that point, and so it worked out, but it was funny.
Yeah. Another piece that might be helpful for people around the inner critic is, and people don't usually know this, none of us are particularly fond of people who are arrogant and really full of themselves and always maybe building themselves up in sort of a superior way. Mm-hmm. We all go, yeah, no, that's no good. But that's heads of the coin. And tails is, I'm really horrible, I failed, I'm no good. And it's actually the same coin. So if you can get it through your head that these energies of sort of arrogance and self-abasement are actually all the ego doing what the ego does, mm-hmm. which is not the strength of your full self of love, of presence, of being. Either one of them is just going to that weaker link. And it's usually easier for people to recognize, like, oh, yeah, we should not be all arrogant and like superior. Well, equally, you should not be, the other. It's like, this should isn't really a word. It's just like, it's none of it's really who you are. That's the point. It's not really what you are. So Can we just since we're smart, get it that if it were going to help us, it would have helped by now, and we can just set it down. And then we have to practice that route of setting it down, just like you're doing. It's amazing.
Yeah, see, a lot of people need people like you because they don't get it. And when you're raised in, a household mm-hmm. where it's constantly, what are you, stupid, or whatever, that is hard to get by. Thankfully, that's not what I grew up in. I had other shit that I had to deal with, but I've seen a lot of people that have dealt with it, and they're just like, oh, I'm so stupid. And I'm like, oh my God, you're not stupid. Stop. Yeah. And it's hard to get them out of that. I'm not even going to stick to the question. Screw it, because we're just talking at this point.
That's good flow.
When you work with somebody, and I guess this is kind of leading to one of them, but I know the answer, but the audience doesn't. What is your differentiator that, that somebody would choose you as opposed to somebody else who does something like you do? Although I don't know many people who do what you do. So, I think there's a differentiator right there, but.
There's probably two things. One is, I don't believe in hierarchy. So I may be, you may hire me as a guide, whether that's individually or in a group. But to me, we're all master rock climbers. We all are this. It's what we are. We're the master we seek. We're, perfect, whole, and complete. We're having an imperfect and incomplete experience of what we are, but it's not that you are not perfect, whole, and complete. So my job as a guide for you is to see what you are, to really actually see that. And that's who I listen to when I work with you. Of course, I'm going to listen to your mind. You're going to talk. You're going to tell me things. Emotions might be there. So I'm going to hear your heart. I'm going to hear your mind. But the thing I'm going to listen to the loudest is you and your wisdom, that in that greater transcendent sense. And that's what guides us. That's because you're the master on you. You're the only one with you from when you're born to when you die. And if I can hear you in ways that you can't yet hear yourself, perceive things about you that you don't know yet, help you connect the dots, and then give you energy and tools that help you live those, that's going to make me really, really happy. So that's one thing, is that we're just equals on the road, and I happen to have scaled the rock face that you haven't been on. If we're master rock climbers, I know where the footholds are. I know where the handholds are, and it's going to be a way better climb for you to get where you want to go if you have a guide who knows a route. So that's part of what I bring. And then the other is really at the core and underlying everything that I do is the energy work, because we just can't solve the problem at the level it was created, which is usually through our painful experience and the response of our mind about what that means about us and the world. That's not really where the answer comes from. That's why I find traditional self-love sometimes is a bit more of just a kind of perpetuating loop. It's the small self and the mind telling the part that's the small self and the mind that you're good and that you love you. but it actually needs to come from a greater source. So when I'm working with you, listening to the master that you are, listening to your highest self, your soul, whatever you want to call it, presence, that's the part that helps heal you. That's actually where the healing work happens, is through being able to embody what you are. It heals everything, what you truly are. It actually makes you free. It makes you happy. It makes, it's like, it's actually the answer. So we got to get you connected with you, what you are, so that you can have the life you want. And usually there's this levels of disconnection, and all come by completely honestly. Like, yeah, we learn it. We have to survive, and we develop the patterns and all the stuff. And then one day we're like, there's something more here. This worked for now, but it's not anymore. I'm ready for more. Yeah. So that's where I come in.
Wow. I love that. One of the things that I noticed when we first met was just how self-aware you are. And it takes a really long time to get there. I mean, it does. Right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of pieces. It's true. Yeah.
And people, say about me that I'm one of the most self-aware people that they know. And it's like, well, it didn't happen overnight. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to look in the mirror. In order to be able to be self-aware, you have to be able to hold that mirror up and love and accept every single part of you. Even the parts that, you think can be better, right? You have to love it all. And it, like when I say it, my heart it took so freaking long. And it took a lot of work. It took a lot of, growing up thinking I was bad, thinking I was bad, like things that were happening to me because I was bad. I did something to perpetuate it. I was a freaking child. So anything that happened to me, I didn't. But, it took a lot of years to, get there. And I really wish for everybody that, because I think this world would be a much more loving place if people would really stop being angry, stop the hatred, stop all the shit that you've been taught, and really look inside. Really look inside and look in your heart. And is this who you're supposed to be? And if you look in your heart and you think that that's who you're supposed to be, then that's who you're supposed to be. Go for it. If you look in there and for a minute you're like, oh, maybe this isn't good for my higher self, then do the work.
Yeah. And see, it's so interesting. I love what you're saying, because you're talking about self-actualization, and you're talking about getting free from that programming and conditioning and the stuff that you were taught that was lies. And it was absolute lies. And part of the way I hear you saying that happens is through connection with something that's actually totally beyond Iris. Because is the higher self just Iris, or is that something more than that? And so I feel like that's part of what begins to unfold, are these miraculous levels of, okay, here I am as a human, and here I am as kind of a higher self and a soul. And is it true? We're really all one, and everything's the universe. And the farther you go, the less you like, it starts with that. It has to be first, that intense healing coming home into who you are. And then it just keeps going from there. It actually kind of moves from being a place of like repair to revelation. I mean, like just in the most like wondrous, like there's always more landscape, and there's always more light, and there's always more wonder, and there's always more beauty. And so it's a pretty wondrous path. But yeah, when you were talking, I heard you, the way you were describing what you've done in your life, and it's so palpable, it's palpable how you're different and how you're happier, and how things are just, it's more of that for the whole world. Then it's like for you, and it's for everybody. And the word that came in was like that you had a devotion to that. You were devoted to yourself and your path. And I think it requires that to be really free, to be really just where you can live peacefully, lovingly, happily. It's totally worth it. Like, what's the alternative,
Yes. I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
Gosh. So we're at like over an hour already. Okay. How do people find you? People are like an hour. I'm like, it goes so fast. And especially like when you're in flow. How do people get hold of you?
Yeah, you can go to ChristineLaria.com. It's there. There's a bunch of free stuff that, like, one of them is messages from the field. I deliver a weekly message of wisdom that's free. You can do that. Sign up for that. There's actually a masterclass if you scroll to the bottom of my main webpage on ending self-judgment once and for all. If you've been listening and that's the one for you, it's free. It gives you all the pieces that we touched on and more. I usually do a free event each month as well. There's ways to experience the work directly. Right now, I'm in this amazing series, totally free. You don't even have to email sign up, but you can. It's called Friends in High Vibrational Places because, I got
the email. Yeah.
Yeah, I know so many friends who are just amazing people, and I love to connect people with what might be a missing piece for them. It doesn't need to be me. It's like, what's for you? That's like the cookbook. I love it. You want to do the recipe that you want, and you want to make sure you have the ingredient that makes it really good. Well, that may be somebody else. So anyway, that's there too. But yeah, they can find me there. And of course, all these beautiful singing bowls, which we just barely touched on, they're all for sale.
I know. They're like, oh my God.
There's a link to that there on that site too. And you can browse the gallery, and they're, like you said, sound is direct. It makes it faster. It makes it easier. Everything, all that transformational work you're doing. Yeah, it's amazing. So I've
tried doing like the bowl thing, and I can never get it to work.
Yeah. But then you just listen to somebody else do it. Let it, go to the sound transmission and just receive.
I know, but I want to do. I'm a doer. I'm like,
there you go. All right,
we'll figure it out.
Practice.
I know. I went into a store and like my friend just went. And I was like, oh, cool. I should be able to do that. And it was like, nothing happened. I went.
I just gotta say, bowls are like people. They like to be touched differently, and we find our bowl, like, we might like people, but we don't necessarily want to be with all people.
Right.
And so if that happened, it could be because that's just not your person in terms of that bowl. Okay. Just it's very individual. Totally. It's not a just, oh, that's how it is. No, not at all. So keep open. Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk about that. We'll definitely talk about that. So, the last question that I ask all my guests, and I'm so sad that we're at the end of this already, is what lights your fire?
Really, it's you being what you are, you having your life. That actually is the thing that lights me up the most. That and swimming with any cetaceans in the ocean. So whales, dolphins, they totally light my fire. And other than that, it's watching people actually light up their own lives, because it's the oneness thing. When you have that, I get it. I get to have it too. When you have you and you have your life in joy and freedom. And yeah, that makes me happy.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing you with me and my audience. Hang on one second. I'm going to say goodbye and I'll be right back.
Thanks for
everybody. Thank you again. I just say this every week, but just thank you so much for hanging in, with us an hour plus. I know you all are, thrilled with the people that I've been having on. Not as thrilled as me, I promise you. The experience that I have of speaking to these amazing people is just, it's priceless. And if you picked up any nuggets, share the episode. If you like what you hear, subscribe. When you subscribe, you get a notification of a new episode. Like it. The more likes I get, the higher we move up. And at this point, that's really what I want to do, because I want to be able to reach more people, because I believe that the people that are on this show have messages that people are supposed to hear. So share, like, subscribe. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Thank you so much. And until next time, go out and find what lights your fire. See ya.